issue. A witness is qualified as an expert by knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, and may testify thereto in the form of an opinion or otherwise. Mr. Messick's testimony yesterday was not helpful to the jury in understanding the evidence or to determine a fact and issue. Mr. Messick testified that the first thing he did with the video was that it was requested that he process the video for enhancement to clear and sharpen the image of individuals in the video. It also requested that I put arrows on the video to show where I thought rounds hit. Mr. Messick has no background in ballistics, and the arrows that he put in that video cannot form the basis of his expert testimony. He admitted that he has no training or experience in ballistics. He admitted that he testified one time as an expert in ballistics. Mr. Messick testified that he put arrows where he believed that there were shots fired. Again, Mr. Messick has no background in ballistics or trajectory analysis. Therefore, he could not properly place those arrows in the video to represent what he believed were shots fired without the proper experience, skill, scientific, or technical knowledge that an expert witness is required to have in order to render an opinion. Lastly, Your Honor, Mr. Messick's testimony was confusing. It would not assist the jury in understanding the evidence or in understanding a fact and issue. His testimony regarding puffs of smoke did not indicate a direction of flight, did not indicate a direction of travel of a bullet. In short, he had no basis to formulate the opinion that these arrows were somehow indicative of anything important with respect to the bullets that were fired and whether or not, and what those bullets mean and the puffs of smoke mean. Thank you.
Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Judge. One of the issues that the jury is going to have to consider and decide is how many times Laquan McDonald was struck by a bullet. And this testimony, when it's combined with Mr. Patterson and Dr. Arun Kumar, will absolutely go to the issue of, was Laquan McDonald struck by 16 bullets? This was an issue that was before this court in People versus Degorski, and the appellate court addressed this exact issue. As in Degorski, this evidence is highly probative where the jury, as the finder of fact, is charged with considering where the 16 bullets landed. Mr. Messick, Mr. Patterson, and Dr. Arun Kumar, when their testimony is combined, will clearly show that Laquan McDonald was struck 16 times. The enhanced video, the slowed down video at 1/4 speed, and the identification of the puffs of smoke, all considered together, will assist the jury in making that determination. And I'd ask that you reconsider your ruling from yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the pathologist in Cook County at this time with the medical examiner?
Yes, she is. Dr. Arun Kumar is the chief medical examiner. She'll be here at 10:30 this morning.
Okay, good. Thank you for that update. All right, first off, after the basic foundational evidence has been laid for an expert witness, the next criteria, and this is the one that the Supreme Court of our state and the appellate courts have held, will the expert witness's testimony aid the jury in understanding the evidence? Yesterday, the expert caused confusion, all right? First of all, he shouldn't have been testifying about the arrows on this, the video, the enhanced video. The first interpretation was that was the paths of bullets. And if you looked at it as a semi-hemisphere, the bullets were coming from both the east and the west and also vertical. So, and then the other thing is, if he was the expert, he could have put annotations on the arrows saying this is a puff of smoke rather than the misinterpretation of the direction of the bullets of entry or exit. Then the other thing is any expert can testify about another expert's conclusions and report. If that expert, first of all, they have to be in the same field. If that expert has done independent research and independent cooperation in reaching his opinion about the testimony that the testifying expert will give. Here we had Mr. Messick testifying that the ballistic expert helped him and other things. He was testifying about an opinion of another expert, and he wasn't, and Mr. Messick was not in the field of that ballistic expert. So that should have never been allowed. All right. He did not aid in the understanding of the evidence to the jury. All right. What I'm going to do before I make a decision, I want the issues conference at this time. Let me have 2 attorneys from each side. All right. There'll be a short recess. All right, do we have members from the clerk's office here, please? All right, come on up, identify yourselves and your position with the clerk's office.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Hello, Angie.
Angela Robinson, Chief Deputy Clerk, Williams County Division.
And ma'am,
Luis Bedard, Fund County Manager.
and what do you do, Luz, for the clerk's office, for the clerk of the court's office?
I do numerous jobs, Your Honor.
Why are you down here?
Requested.
All right, come on. Maybe that's why there's confusion's going on. Nobody told you that you're down here because someone filed a motion and it didn't get down here?
From today, from this morning, and I know 7.
Mr. McMahon, what time did you file the motion? What time was it stamped?
9:07, Judge.
Right, AM. You understand that this is a high profile case, right? And weren't you told that, keep a little more attention to this when you see this case and what has to be done?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And when did you bring this thing down?
Like 10 minutes ago.
10 minutes ago. That's not permissible, all right? You're obstructing justice, all right? You understand that?
I understand that.
And did anybody, were you working the counter when this was filed or one of your employees?
I was one of my employees.
And they didn't call it to your attention?
When they did, I was.
No, stop it. When did they call it to your attention?
I was looking at the clock at the time, so.
Well,
It was maybe 5-10 minutes.
well, didn't you look at when the motion was stamped?
Yes, I did. Your Honor.
And knowing that this is a high profile case and that the trial was going on today, and then look at the clock, so you don't have any idea of that either, right?
As soon as I get the documents, do what I need to do, which is data entry, have someone data entry, make the copies, copy machine jammed. I apologize about that, and I brought it.
Yeah, but here's the whole, did you notify us and call down and tell my wonderful clerk that, listen, it's on the way, but the copying machine, you only have one copying machine up there?
I had 2.
Both of them jammed.
One of them jammed, and I was able to finish off with the other one.
Well, the other thing, when these things happen, when you use some common sense, make the copies, then send the copies down, and then do the data entry so that we get it down here, all right? Not okay. Next time, there's gonna be consequences,
Yes.
right? You understand that? God love you, Angie. Keep up the good work, but watch the people, all right?
Yes.
If they fail, no matter whose fault it is, they're gonna blame you, all right? And that's not just, but that's true, okay?
I do
Good.
understand. Thank you.
All right, Luce, be careful.
I will. Thank you.
Okay, we've had an issues conference concerning the motion to reconsider. All right, who's going to make the presentation? Thank you, Mr. McMahon.
Judge, pursuant to the issues conference, the state will recall Mr. Messick. Mr. Messick's testimony will be limited to the scope of his expertise. That includes the video forensic enhancement. We will not publish any video, any further video during Mr. Messick's testimony. You'll reconsider that pending additional witnesses, including Mr. Patterson and Dr. Arun Kumar.
All right, and defense, this has been agreed to, is that correct?
Yes, Judge.
And you've consulted with your client, and this is trial strategy, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you very much. All right, that will be the order. All right, so the motion to reconsider will be sustained under those conditions. All right. What I am going to do then is, before Mr. Messick retakes the stand, inform the jury that his testimony from yesterday is completely stricken, that it is not any evidence, and that they based their conclusions on discussions on the evidence that has been presented in this courtroom when he testifies after that instruction. At this time, bring our wonderful people up, please.
All rights for the jury.
people. All right, juror number 255. Same
No.
questions?
No.
All right. Juror number 254.
No.
Thank you. Juror number 253.
No and no.
Outstanding. All right. Juror number 252.
No and no.
Juror number 251.
No and no.
Juror number 250.
No and no.
Juror number 249.
No and no.
Juror number 248.
No and no.
Juror number 247.
No and no.
Juror number 246.
No and no.
Juror number 245.
No, no.
Juror number 244.
No and no.
Juror number 243.
No and no.
Juror number 242.
No and no.
Juror number 241.
No and no.
Juror number 240.
No.
So your brother-in-law didn't say nothing. We're making progress. All right, we're just going to be a very short recess and then we'll begin evidence. So thank you very much.
All right for the jury?
Sir, have a seat. The chair is adjustable, the microphone's live, so pull your chair up to the microphone, speak into the microphone, and everybody will be able to hear your testimony, and that would be greatly appreciated. So thank you. All right, proceed, State.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, would you please state your full name, spell your last name?
Alan Gayan, Gayan,
What is your profession, Mr. Gahan?
registered nurse,
Where do you work?
currently at Illinois Masonic.
I want to direct your attention to October 20th of 2018. Where did you work at that time?
Mount Sinai.
Mount Sinai Hospital?
Correct.
Can you move forward and talk a little louder? Thank you. And at what capacity did you work at Mount Sinai Hospital?
I was a registered nurse in the emergency room.
And I want to direct your attention to approximately 10:22 p.m. that night. Were you working as the emergency room nurse at that time, or an emergency room nurse?
Yes.
And at about 10:22 p.m., did a patient by the name of Laquan McDonald come into the emergency room?
Yes.
When he came into the emergency room, was he treated by doctors?
Yes.
And what was your role?
I was the charter or documenter as a nurse.
I'm sorry, I didn't clearly hear you.
Charter or documenter.
And what does the charter or documenter do?
So what I do is I listen to all the information that is given by the doctors and document their exam, things that are going on that are being done by the doctors and nurses while in the room.
Approximately how many doctors were in the emergency room while Laquan McDonald was there?
If I had to guess, there was typically 6 or 7 doctors in the room.
Now I want to show showing counsel what's been previously admitted in evidence as People's Exhibit 36. I want to show you what's been admitted previously in evidence of People's Exhibit 36.
Okay.
Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is People's Exhibit 36?
It is a urine cup.
A urine cup?
Correct.
Okay. Doesn't have urine, does
It does not have urine in it. It has bullet fragments in the urine cup.
Okay. How did the bullet fragments get into the urine cup?
That was something that we would typically do if we found bullet fragments and during a trauma. It was just a sealed container that we'd put it in.
Okay, so was it sterile at the time that?
Yes.
Okay. So where did those particular bullet fragments come from to get into the urine cup?
From my charting that I recall, it said they were found in the clothing of Laquan McDonald.
And then you indicated that in your charting?
Yes.
They were recovered from Laquan McDonald, put in the urine cup?
Correct.
And then where was the urine cup, who was that given to?
That was given to Detective Johnson
Of the Chicago Police Department?
of the Chicago Police Department, yes.
I'm
Thank
sorry, you're going to have to really speak up a little bit so everybody can hear you. Sorry. Thank you. If you don't, if it helped you pulling your seat up a little bit closer. All right, go ahead.
And that's all the questions I have for Mr. Gahan.
Cross-examination, Mr. Rook.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning. Is it Guyan?
Gayan or
Gayan? I'm sorry. Good morning.
Good morning.
So part of your responsibilities at Mount Sinai, and this was back in 2014, right?
Correct.
Okay. So back in 2014, your responsibilities were to chart what information you received on a patient. Would that be correct?
Correct.
All right. And I'm going to show you what's been marked as 3, 4.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm going to show you what I marked as defendant's number 4 and ask if you recognize that.
I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
This is a adult trauma flow sheet that we used on all trauma patients that came in.
And you put in the information in this sheet, correct?
Correct.
And this is the sheet from Laquan McDonald, right?
Correct.
All right, and it shows up on the upper left-hand corner that when he came into the hospital, he had no pulse, correct?
Correct.
He had no heartbeat, correct?
Correct.
So he was dead when he came to the hospital, right?
Correct.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Anything else?
I do, yes, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Guyan, you are not a medical doctor, are you?
I am not.
So are you a person who is qualified to give an expert opinion as to whether a person is dead or alive?
Sustained, that's not an expert opinion. Come on.
Well, Mr. Guyan, when Laquan McDonald came into the hospital, he stayed in the hospital for more than 30 minutes, didn't he?
I don't remember.
I'm sorry. Was there an objection?
Yes.
What's
Well, I don't know how that's relevant, number one, and how it's not beyond the scope.
you started cross-examining about Mr. Gaines' function? Overruled if that's your objection. Go ahead, proceed, Steve.
He was in the emergency room for at least 30 minutes, wasn't he?
I believe approximately so, yes.
And when he was in the emergency room for about 30 minutes, 5 different medical doctors worked on Laquan McDonald, didn't they?
Correct.
In fact, the trauma team actually cut open his chest.
All right, stop. That's enough. Move on.
Well, did those 5 doctors work on him for practice, or were they trying to help a person remain alive?
Yes.
As to the form of the question, sustained. You have to establish that he was alive at the time if you want to go into it.
Did any of the doctors tell you when the 5 of them were working on Laquan McDonald that they were working on a dead person?
Sustained. Stay away from this right now, all right? Ask him if he had any personal knowledge whether Mr. McDonald was alive or dead, all right? And stop the drama too, all right?
Did you make a personal determination whether or not Laquan McDonald was dead?
I wrote down the information that was given to me from the doctors and from the nurses.
Okay, he was pronounced dead at
All right,
10
this is all hearsay. Let's move on. All right, that's it. You can step down. Thank you. All right, it'll be stricken.
I have no further questions.
I'm going to caution you all to stay, ask questions that are material and relevant, all right? And don't go astray on this. All right, stay, call your next witness.
Here to stay, we call Mark Smith.
Solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this honorable court and jury shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
All right, have a seat. The seat's adjustable. Pull your chair up to the microphone. It's live. Speak into the mic. We'll all be able to hear your testimony and would be greatly appreciated. So thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, would you please state your full name and spell your last name?
Mark Smith, Smith.
Mr. Smith, what is your profession?
I'm a Chicago firefighter paramedic with the Chicago Fire Department.
And what is your training as a paramedic?
I went to EMT school for 5 months, and then I went to paramedic school for a year. It's been a while.
How long have you been a paramedic?
20 years.
And can you tell the jury, what does a paramedic do generally?
We give ALS treatment to people who may need it, medical treatment, trauma, to take care of people.
I think you said, did you say ALS treatment?
Yeah, advanced life support, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I want to direct your attention to October 20th of 2014 at about 9:58 p.m. Were you working that night at about that time?
Yeah, I was on shift, yeah.
Were you dispatched to anywhere at about 9:58 p.m.?
We were at the firehouse and we were called for a GSW gunshot wound.
All right, Mr. Smith, firefighter Smith, stop using abbreviations and give us the full definition of what you're saying GSW is.
It's a gunshot. We were dispatched to the scene for a gunshot wound.
Thank you.
Did you go to a particular scene?
Yes.
Where Where did you go?
I don't know the exact address. It was like 39th and Pulaski, roundabout, possibly there. I don't know the exact address.
Okay, what, were you in an ambulance?
Yes, sir.
When you arrived, did you see a person later identified as Laquan McDonald?
We arrived and found a patient lying on the sidewalk or on the road.
And when you saw the patient laying on the road, did you later determine that to be Laquan McDonald?
Yes, sir.
Did you then give attention to Laquan McDonald who was laying on the road?
Yes.
Can you describe when you approached Mr. McDonald, what did you observe?
We arrived on the scene. Mr. McDonald, the patient, was lying on the road. We got him on a backboard, put him on a stretcher.
Okay, let me just back up. You put him on what?
We got him on a backboard, a long spinal column backboard. And then we put him on the stretcher and get him into the ambulance off the street.
Okay, and then once he was in the ambulance, did you then do anything with him?
We started our treatment of the patient, yeah. Yes, sir.
Can you explain what that treatment was?
Remove his clothing, find out where the injuries were, monitor IV
Okay, so
as needed.
you applied a monitor,
Yes, sir.
and what did you find when you applied a monitor?
On a monitor, I believe he had a rhythm, possibly in the 60.
Okay, he had a rhythm.
Yes, sir.
What do you mean by a rhythm?
He had a heart rate. There was a pulse, and it showed on the cardiac monitor.
Okay. And approximately what was his rhythm or heart rate at that time?
I believe it was like 60. I don't know exact number.
And when you say 60, is that beats per minute? Or,
Yes, sir.
and then what did you do?
We carried on the care. I put an IV in him.
Okay, so that's an IV, that's an intravenous.
Intravenous, yeah. My partner,
Okay, slow down, let's walk through. So the IV, what did it contain?
normal saline.
Saline?
Saline, yeah.
Okay, and so where do you put that?
Where I could find a vein.
And what was the purpose of putting the saline IV into the?
In case the patient needs to replace the fluid, to give him fluid to replace the blood that he may have lost. And it's also, if any medication is needed to be given, it's a path to give medications.
Okay, thank you. So then after you put the IV in, what did you do?
My partner suctioned him.
Okay, now what does suction mean?
He didn't appear to be breathing, and he had no gag reflex, so we had to put an airway in for him to assist his respirations.
Okay, remember the jury doesn't really probably know what that means. So
Okay.
what do you mean by put an airway in? Exactly.
An ET tube, a tube king airway down in his larynx to help him breathe, so
Okay,
we
so
can.
you're pointing to your
Yeah.
throat, so you put it down the throat?
Yes.
Okay. And then once this tube was put down his throat, what happened?
We attach a bag, a bag to and put him under the oxygen and assist in his respirations.
And then what happened?
We also had to suction him because there was a lot of fluid, blood.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Now, what do you mean by suction?
You get a catheter, suction anything that may be blocking his airway, may stop us properly putting an airway in him.
Okay, so you're suctioning through the throat?
Yeah,
Okay. And then after suctioning him and putting the tube down his throat, what did you do?
we got ready to transport. At that point, we'd done what we could do at that point.
What about CPR? Did anybody?
Well, that my partner was calling medical control to let them know that we were bringing a patient in. And at that point, the monitor, the rhythm on the monitor, that casually went down. And then we checked his pulse. He had no pulse. And at that point, we started chest compressions for CPR.
Okay, and where was he still at the scene in the ambulance at that time?
We were still working at the scene at that time, yes.
And then when you lost a pulse, who performed CPR?
I initially started chest compressions. We had another firefighter in the back of the ambulance with us for assistance.
Okay, And what, if a person's already lost pulse, what is the point? And when you say pulse, that means the heart stopped?
Yes, sir.
So if the heart is stopped, what's the point of doing CPR?
Do CPR, get the heart pumping, work the heart, pump the blood from the heart, get the circulation going.
Okay. And then once the CPR was begun, what happened next?
There was no change in the patient's condition. We continued CPR. I was replaced by the firefighter. He continued to do the chest compressions, and I jumped into the front of the ambulance to transport to the hospital.
And did you then transport him to a hospital?
Yes, sir.
Which hospital?
I believe it was Mount Sinai.
And then at Mount Sinai, was the patient of Laquan McDonald taken to the emergency room?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Morning, Mr. Smith.
Good morning.
You went there with a partner, right?
Yes,
Michelle Riley,
my officer, yeah.
and she was the paramedic that was mostly treating the patient. Would that be correct to say?
No,
You were driving though from the.
no,
from the
I
scene.
was, yes, sir.
Excuse me for a second.
Sorry.
You drove from the scene to the hospital, correct?
Yes, sir.
You were not in the back of the ambulance with the patient on the way to the hospital, correct?
Not during transport.
Michelle Riley was, correct?
Yes, sir.
So she was treating him or trying to treat him the whole time on the trip to the hospital, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you remember testifying, or do you remember testifying in the federal grand jury on August 26, 2015?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and you gave answers to questions they asked you in that grand jury, correct?
Yes, sir.
And one of the questions they asked you was if you remember the patient's condition on your arrival at the scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you said he didn't.
I'm sorry, ask the question, give the answer,
All right.
and then ask them if that's
Sure.
correct. Let's do it the right way.
Do you remember when you arrived on the scene and when you first approached the patient? 8, I'm sorry. Do you remember when you arrived on the scene and when you first approached the patient, was the patient still alive? Your answer was he didn't appear to be, he was unresponsive. Is that your answer you gave back in 2015?
Yes, sir.
So he was not responding to anything when you got there, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And again, you were asked a question on page 9. The patient was not reacting. Your answer was he was totally unresponsive, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's when you arrived on the scene, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you talked about, I think were you present when Michelle Riley tried to put the tube down his throat?
Yes, sir.
And you said there was a lot of blood coming out of his chest, right?
Not at that point. The blood was being suctioned from his throat so that we could get a clear path to an airway.
But at some point during that process, blood was coming out of his chest, correct?
That was during chest, that's when we were doing chest compressions.
Okay, when you're doing chest, you were trying to revive him, basically, right?
Yes, sir.
He was dead, and you were trying to get him back to life, right?
I would object to the form of the question, Your Honor, because
It's cross-examination, overruled.
Do you understand the question?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
Sure. He was dead, you were trying to get him back, his heart back pumping, right?
At that point, his heart had stopped,
Yes.
and we were doing chest compressions. Yes, sir.
Exactly. And when you were doing that, blood was coming out of the wound to his chest, right?
I noticed there was a blood was coming every time we pushed down on his chest. There was blood coming from a upper.
A wound to his chest?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you got to the scene, you didn't find a whole lot of blood on the scene, right?
No,
And there wasn't a whole lot of blood in the ambulance, right?
I don't believe so.
No. The blood was coming out when they were pumping his heart, trying to get him back alive, right?
Yes, sir.
And it was coming out the hole in his chest, correct?
Yes, sir.
You remember telling that grand jury on page 13? You were asked, do you recall whether there was any pulse or other signs of life upon arrival at the hospital, or whether your answer was no? We never got spontaneous circulation. We never got, I don't believe so, no.
That's correct.
The next question was, okay, he was deceased by the time you arrived at the hospital, and your answer was yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Anything else?
Yes, sir.
Could I have the attorneys over here, and could you come over here, please? Proceed, Mr. Cohn.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Smith, you testified on cross-examination that when you arrived on the scene, there were no apparent signs of life,
That's correct. He was unresponsive.
but then did you put monitors on him to see if you could find some less apparent signs?
We started our care, yes.
And did you find that he actually did have signs of life?
He had a pulse.
So meaning his heart was beating?
Yes, sir.
And when he arrived at the hospital, his heart was not beating, is that correct?
That's correct.
But were paramedics still doing CPR?
Yes, sir.
And when a person's heart stops, can that person still survive?
That's objection. That would be an opinion.
You'd have to qualify him about that.
But he was taken to the emergency room for care. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Mr. Rupert, anything else?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Firefighter Smith, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, State, could you call your next witness, please?
Runner to call Greg Bright. Stephanie Standing, Basic Clerk.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this honorable court of jury shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Hi, have a seat. The seat is adjustable, and so is the microphone. The microphone's live, so if you pull your seat up to the mic, speak into the mic, we'll all be able to hear your testimony, and it would be greatly appreciated. So thank you. Proceed, State.
Thank you. Sir, would you say your name and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Gregory Brate, B-R-A-T-E,
Sir, where are you employed?
by the Illinois State Police Forensic Science Command,
And-
currently at the Forensic Science Center in Chicago.
How long have you been employed by the Illinois State Police?
since July of 1987, so a little over 31 years.
And in what capacity are you employed?
Currently, I am a forensic firearms examiner.
And during your entire 31 years with the Illinois State Police, have you always been a forensic scientist?
I have been a forensic scientist the whole time. I have not been a forensic firearms examiner the whole time.
And when you first started with the state police, what field were you in?
I was a forensic scientist specializing in drug chemistry.
And so how long were you in the drug chemistry division?
Approximately 24 years.
And then when was it? What year that you changed to firearms?
I completed a 2-year training program in firearms identification with the Illinois State Police in the end of November of 2013, and have been a firearms examiner since then.
Now, sir, what is your educational background?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from the University of Illinois.
And have you had specialized training in firearms?
Yes, as I said, I've completed a 2-year training program with the Illinois State Police.
And that 2-year training program, did that include in-house training and then training outside of the Illinois State Police?
It mainly consisted of training within the state police, including lectures, roundtable discussions, practical exercises. Also, during that time frame, I completed a serial number restoration training with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. I also attended several tours of firearms, tool, and ammunition manufacturers.
And are you a member of any professional organizations?
Yes, I'm a member of the Association of Firearms and Tool Marks Examiners. I'm also a member of the Midwest Association of Forensic Scientists and the Southern Association of Forensic Scientists.
Now, sir, have you ever testified as an expert in the area of firearms identification?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
10.
Was that both in state and federal court?
Yes, once in federal court, the rest was in state court.
Now, besides that, your first 24 years with the Illinois State Police, had you testified in court in that capacity?
Yes, approximately 40 times as a forensic drug chemist.
Now, sir, can you explain for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what is firearms identification?
Firearms identification is a discipline of forensic science that has as its main concern whether a bullet, cartridge case, or other ammunition component was fired from a particular firearm.
And how is it that you make a determination if a bullet or cartridge case has been fired from a particular firearm?
This is done through direct comparison of the evidence to each other or to test shots using a comparison microscope.
Now, so when you say cartridge cases, is it the same thing that is commonly called a shell casing?
Yes, they're the same thing.
And how is it that you actually make a comparison?
It's, like you said, it's through direct comparison of the evidence to other evidence or to the test shot using a comparison microscope.
And is there something called class characteristics?
Yes, what we're looking for are similarity in the reproduction of class and individual characteristics.
And how is it that you can make a determination regarding class characteristics?
Excuse me. The main thing that we're looking for is the similarity in the reproduction of class and individual characteristics.
And is that done by looking at lands and grooves?
It is on bullets. It's generally comparing individual characteristics that are found that are left on the fired evidence from the firearm.
Okay, and can you explain to the jury what are lands and grooves?
Yes, lands and grooves are raised and lowered areas that are cut or impressed